Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. Long time no see. I know I haven't posted in 2 weeks now. I'm very sorry about that. I had a lot going on the last 2 weeks. It's been kind of crazy. The first week I took off because I was getting my new setup kind of together. It's still kind of in the works. I feel like this is the tentative setup as of now because I got a new chair. I got a new thing going. This is kind of what we're working with right now, so hopefully it's not awful. I'll play with lighting and stuff like that. This is kind of the guinea pig video, if you will. And then this last week, my mom and Justin actually tested positive for COVID. So yeah, we've had COVID in the house, which has been not great. Feels pretty sucky, to be honest. I feel fine. I feel great. I don't feel sick at all. So yeah, that's why I'm filming now. I just wanted to kind of test it a bit and see if I was gonna get sick, but it looks like I'm okay as of right now, so I am going to film as long as I can. So that's where I've been the last 2 weeks, so I hope you're not too upset why I haven't been posting, but I'm here with my June wrap up. June was a hectic month, obviously, especially towards the end. I ended up reading 17 books total. It was kind of a mixed bag month. I feel like I read a lot of average books and not a lot of super duper winners that I really loved. So, you know, I guess that's fine. So that's where we're at, and yeah, let's just get into my June wrap-up. We're gonna start with the lowest ranking books, and then we'll work our way up to my 5 stars, so we end on a happy note, like always. So let's get into it. Also, just to remind everyone, June was my TBR that I picked blindfolded, so those books are also in here. So the first book we're going to talk about was the one that I ended up DNFing, and it is The Perfectly Fine House by Stephen Kozeniewski and Willie E. Young. I think that's how you say their names. Again, still don't know. This is a kind of like a horror comedy, like a satire on haunted houses. It's more about if haunted houses were like super duper common, and it's really weird to not have a house that is haunted with ghosts, that kind of thing. I didn't get very far into this book. I think I got like 40 some pages in, and it's just not really my vibe. It's not really my thing. It didn't really feel like it was gonna be something I would really be interested in. I like horror comedy, but it has to be like a specific kind. I feel like Grady Hendrix is someone that does horror comedy really well, and this just didn't really feel as horror as I wanted and more comedy. So it just wasn't really my thing. I couldn't get into the writing, couldn't really get into the plot, so I DNF'd it, unfortunately. So next up is my 2-star category. I have one book in here, and that is Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates. This was also a book that I picked blindly. You know, this was really boring. It is from the perspective of Quentin, who is a sexual psychopath, and you just get to read his, like, how his mind works and why he's doing certain things that he does, and like, it's honestly, it's boring. You can definitely tell that this book was modeled after like Jeffrey Dahmer, which just didn't really interest me that much. I don't know. This was just really boring. Quentin is really annoying. I was just bored and annoyed, and everything he said just made me want to like bash my head into a wall because I was so bored and like annoyed, and everything he did was just like weird, and like not in like a fun weird way or like a scary weird way, more just like a why am I still reading this? And the only reason I read it was because it was 181 pages, so I just kind of like pushed through. I mean, it's pretty quick. It was just extremely boring, and I really didn't get anything out of it, and yeah, I didn't really I didn't really care for it. So yeah, I don't know, I'm sorry, Joyce Carol Oates. I have another book by this author that I'm hoping I like more than this. It wasn't very good. I don't know. Not my cup of tea, not my thing. I just didn't like it. Next up is the 2.5 star category, and the book in here is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. Unfortunately, I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. This book is about Jane, who asks Augustine for a marriage of convenience. Augustine is a doctor, and Jane wants to marry him because she wants to be independent, and he's a recluse, and she's like, okay, this will work for us, it'll be beneficial for us both, yada yada. And then she gets stranded at his doorstep when she's not supposed to spend the night there, and things get wild. The first half of this book I absolutely loved. I loved it. I was so into it. I was enamored with the writing. I liked the plot. I liked the characters. I was super, super, super invested. And then halfway through, it took a turn, and I did not care for it. And unfortunately, I just could not get into it, and I was kind of annoyed by how it progressed and everything that started happening, and it just, I don't know, it didn't really go where I thought it was gonna go or where I wanted it to go, and I was just really, really, really disappointed by that. I was really, really excited from the first half of this book, and it let me down, and I'm sad about it. So unfortunately, I gave it 2.5 stars. I really wish this had been better. I really wish it had followed like the first half of the book. It would have been so good. It could have been a 5-star read, but that second half really did not work in its favor, unfortunately. Next up, we have the 3-star category, and first up is Hide by Kirsten White. This was one of my 2022 anticipated releases. I did a reading vlog on this book. I didn't hate this as much as everyone else did, but I didn't love it. I'm not going to go into too much details about this book because, like I said, I've done a reading vlog. This book is about a big game of hide and seek that is taking place in an abandoned amusement park. It's going to last for 7 days. There are 14 competitors, and the last one standing gets $50,000. Now, this book is labeled adult fiction. It is not. It is YA, and I wish they had just went with YA because I feel like a lot of people were let down with the fact that it reads like a YA when it's said to be an adult. And I understand why they labeled it as an adult fiction, because this is kind of centered around millennials and millennial commentary, which I did like, and I understand why the author went in that direction. Because so many factors point to it being YA, it feels very misleading, and I think they could have had the same impact and message but still labeled it YA, and that's kind of why I'm super upset. Is just I don't like picking up a book thinking it's going to be one thing when it isn't. So, you know, I understand the reasoning for labeling it adult, but I think it worked against them to do that. That's just my opinion though. I just really don't like misleading marketing. It really upsets me. So this just feels very misleading. This is also not my kind of horror or like thriller, I guess, depending on how you look at this book. It just goes down a route that is not typically something I like in horror, which I'm not going to, you know, touch on. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not something I typically enjoy. So I was a little disappointed by that, and the lack of gore, especially because the route that this book does take, the lack of gore is just so, it's just such a letdown. It's not fun. It's just kind of boring, unfortunately. So yeah, the characters I liked. I just feel like obviously they're supposed to be like mid-20s and they don't act like mid-20s, which is again why it points to YA. So I think this just had a lot of factors stacking up against it. I did enjoy it for the most part though, which is why I did give it 3 stars. I didn't think it was horrible, but I was pretty let down by a lot of things that this book does. Next up, we have a good old Fear Street book, and this is The Cheater by R.L. Stine, obviously. I love R.L. Stine. I love Fear Street books. I was just feeling them. I thought it would be a lot of fun to do, and you know, I'm back in the Fear Street like mode. I really want to read more Fear Street books, more like point horror. I don't know. I'm really into it. Might try to do that this July, just get like a lot in there. So you might see more of those in my July wrap up. This is about the main character who's under a lot of pressure to take this math achievement test. She wants to impress her dad, and she just knows that she has to do really, really well on this test. And she doesn't think she's going to be able to do it, so she gets this guy to take the test for her. And in return, she will go on a date with him. But he does not stop at one date. He wants more than that. This is a typical Fear Street book. It wasn't anything like super magical. It wasn't anything spectacular. It didn't knock my socks off. It was cheesy. It was a little cringy. It was fun. It was silly. It's everything I wanted in a Fear Street, which is why I settled on 3 stars, just because it was, you know, it did its job. It did what I was looking for it to do. It got me in the mood to read more Fear Street, more point horror. So I think it was a pretty, you know, a pretty decent Fear Street. Next up and last in the 3-star category is Benny Rose, the Cannibal King by Hailey Piper. This was my first Hailey Piper book, and it is part of the Rewind or Die series, which I absolutely love the Rewind or Die series. So this book is about Vermont, and this town in Vermont has this urban legend about Benny Rose, the Cannibal King. And this book takes place in the 80s, and this one Halloween there's a new kid at school, and a bunch of girls decide to prank the new girl and pull like a Benny Rose, the Cannibal King, you know, themed prank, but it goes wrong, and of course Benny Rose ends up surprising everybody and popping up and doing, you know, what Benny Rose, the Cannibal King does. I liked this book, but I had some issues with it. The writing is a little bit clunky for me. It got to the point where I really wasn't sure what was happening all the time. Like, I would read a sentence and then I would realize that I didn't really know what was happening, and I'd have to go back a few sentences to make sure that I was reading correctly, and then I still wouldn't know what was going on. So I felt a little bit confused for most of the book. I was wondering if I was missing something, or if I wasn't reading clearly, or I don't know. I didn't really know. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, is this me? Is it the writing? I mean, it could be me. I don't know. It could have been me, but I think it was the writing just being a little bit like clunky and almost a little jarring, I guess, to some point. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I really liked the girls in the book. They were really like badass, and I thought they really, you know, they were like strong, independent women, which I liked. I do think this is kind of just a typical slasher. It didn't really give me anything new, didn't really surprise me all that much. It didn't really like wow me. I thought it was just like a pretty standard slasher. So I don't know. I really want to read more from Hailey Piper because I know other people really like her other books. So I'm hoping that I can pick up one of her other books and maybe I'll like that one a lot better. But this was just okay for me. It wasn't like wow, you know, it didn't wow me. Next up is the 3.5 star category, and first up we have False Witness by Karen Slaughter. I wanted to like this one way more than I did. So this book is about Lee, who is a defense attorney, and she gets this really wealthy client that she has to defend against multiple rape charges. And she ends up realizing that she knows this man and it wasn't an accident, that he wants her to defend him, and she's running from her past, and her sister is also involved. This reminds me so much of Pretty Girls. Like, it's really, really similar to Pretty Girls. And I don't necessarily mean like the plot, it's just almost very formula similar. They're very, very similar in the sense of what happens in both of them and how they occur. It just feels very, very similar, and I preferred Pretty Girls by far over this. Second, the amount of times COVID was mentioned made me want to throw this book across the room and never pick it up again, okay? I understand that this book takes place in, you know, present day, and Karen Slaughter was setting up the scene and, you know, showing that, you know, the times that we're living in. Yeah, I get it. Okay, Karen, you could have stopped after like the first few chapters. I got it. I understood, because I am living it, okay? I understand. I don't want to read about it, okay? I really don't. I really don't want to read about it. I'm living it. I don't need to be reminded in my books that I'm living in the panini, okay? So I was a little bit frustrated, and unfortunately every time that COVID was brought up, it would immediately pull me out of the story, because it just felt like it was coming out of nowhere half the time. And I was like, okay, yeah, I understand. I know what's happening. I get it. I don't need to be reminded every 5 seconds. And it was honestly super annoying. I think that Karen Slaughter was trying to make a point about how, you know, serious the panini is and in general, and you know, I agree, I do, but this is my book that I was just trying to escape life with. I don't need to be reminded, okay? So that was unfortunate. And you know, I don't know, the ending just felt a little lackluster, okay? Just felt a little lackluster. I think Karen Slaughter does a great job of making me super emotional towards her characters, and you know, like, I really liked the sisterly bond these two had in the book, just like in Pretty Girls, but this just doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't wow me like Pretty Girls did. It just really, it didn't do as much for me, you know? It didn't do as much for me, so I settled with 3.5. I thought that was fair. So next up in the 3.5 star category is The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. I know a lot of people love this book. I don't quite love it. I thought it was okay. This is about Chrissy, who when she's 8 years old, she kills a boy, and then 20 years later she has a 5-year-old daughter, and she's living under a different name, and her past starts to catch up with her. I think that this isn't a thriller or a mystery, in my opinion. This is more like a drama, like a psychological drama. It just wasn't really thrilling or mysterious to me. I think that it's pretty obvious where the book is going the entire time. It didn't really, I don't know, it didn't really surprise me. Nothing was really surprising. Like, I felt like everything was pretty obvious that the book was doing. I don't know. Maybe that's just an unpopular opinion, but that's just how I feel. 2, I just think that these like creepy kid or like murderous kid things, I just don't think they really work for me unless they're in horror, because I don't know, I don't connect with books like this. I don't connect with books about motherhood or books about kids like this, because I'm not a mom. I don't have human children. I am a mom to Letty, who is my pup. I don't feel anything towards kids like they do because I don't have my own. I don't want kids. So these books don't really do anything emotionally for me that I think they would if I had a child. So to me this wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't really do much. It didn't really hit me. It didn't impact me. It didn't really do anything for me that I think it was supposed to. I mean, I think it definitely brings up interesting topics that could lead to like very interesting discussions, like about children who have committed murder and stuff like that. So it definitely makes you think in terms of what it's talking about. But again, it just really didn't have an impact on me. It felt very similar to The Push. It didn't really, I didn't have a connection to it, okay? Like, I didn't feel anything. It just felt a little boring, and like it was very predictable because I obviously knew where it was going. So this was just okay for me. It was decent. It was fine. I liked it enough to finish it, but it wasn't really my thing. Next up and last in the 3.5 star category is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. So this is a folk horror novel. Folk horror isn't really my cup of tea. It really isn't. Every time I pick one up, I think I'm gonna find the one that's gonna change my opinion on folk horror, and then it doesn't, and I'm always slightly disappointed by how I feel about it. So this book is about Mouse, who takes on the job of clearing out her dead grandmother's house, and her grandmother was a hoarder, so the house is pretty bad, and she ends up finding her step-grandfather's journal, and she finds some very interesting things in there, but it kind of just sounds like a lot of raving and like just kind of like bizarre things that don't make a lot of sense. And then Mouse starts experiencing similar things that her step-grandfather was writing about. So the first half of this book I loved. I really, really loved it. I loved the writing. This writing was so easy for me to get involved in and like interested in, and it felt like I was reading how I would be in that situation. Like, it almost felt like I was the main character, because I was like, this feels like me. This feels like how I would speak if I was a character, you know? So I think that's why I was really like invested in that and really interested in it. I loved it. I loved the writing. I loved Mouse, and I loved the first half. The second half gets a little more folk heavy for me, and that's where I kind of got confused, and I'm still not 100% sure what I read. Like, honestly, I got to the end and I was like, huh, what? So I'm a little confused. And folk horror does tend to do that to me. So I think that was just like a me thing. But I am very interested in reading more by T. Kingfisher, because I really loved the writing so much. It's just, folk horror, man, I try so hard. I'm never gonna give up. I will continue to try to find one I like. I really will. But until that day, I still haven't found one I liked. But this was a decent book. It really was. It was that second half. It really lost me. But great characters, great writing. It just confused the absolute crap out of me. That was the big part. Next up, we have the 4-star category, and first up is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I just finished this a few days ago, and honestly, I'm still unsure if I like my 4-star rating that I'm planning on giving this. So this is tentative, it could change, but I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. This book. This book is about 3 girls who went missing at camp, and Emma, the main character, was the last one to see these 3 girls. And then 15 years later, Emma is a painter, and she gets an opportunity to go back to this camp, and she decides that she's going to look for answers about what happened to these 3 girls who were her friends. So I loved almost everything about this book. I really, really liked the camp setting. I liked the way that it was written. I read it extremely fast. I was just like barreling through this book. I know Riley Sager is one of those authors that you either love or hate his books. I feel like I fall in the middle. I feel like I don't necessarily like absolutely love his books, but I don't hate his books. They're always just pretty good, you know? I take them for what they are. I don't like expect too much from them. And I really liked this one. I liked the camp setting. I liked the characters. I liked the way it was written. My biggest complaint as of right now is the ending. I don't think I liked it. I really don't think I liked the ending. I keep thinking about it and I'm just like, do I like it? But I don't think I do. I don't know how I feel about the ending. I'm gonna be honest. I really can't pin how I feel about this book. There's just something about it that I'm not obsessed with. So I think it's the ending, but I'm not really sure. So that's why I settled on 4, because everything else I really did like. But there's just, I think it's that ending. That ending really didn't make me happy. So I think this is just a 4-star. I really thought this was going to be my favorite Riley Sager so far, but I don't think so. I don't think it's topping Lock Every Door or Final Girls, which I know everyone hates Final Girls, but that's my favorite. Everyone leave me alone. So I don't think this one tops those two. Next up in the 4-star category is When Darkness Loves Us by Elizabeth Engstrom. So this is one of the paperbacks from hell. I was very, very excited to read this one. This book has 2 novellas in it, and the first novella was amazing. Oh my gosh, it knocked my freaking socks off. I was obsessed. As soon as I finished it, I was like, what did I just read? What did I just read? That's insane. The second one, I liked the second one. It was a much longer novella compared to the first. I think that hindered it a lot for me. It was just a little too long. The other thing I didn't love about the second novella is they use the R slur so many times, and I mean, my brain turned to freaking mush. That's how many times I saw it. I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I mean, it was multiple times on a page. Like, I'm talking about like sometimes 6 times on a page. And I was just like, okay. Like, I mean, I understand the time period. Like, I get it. But wow. That's a lot of times, okay? That's a lot of times. And so my brain just kind of like, I don't know, I think it just started shutting off because I was just reading it so much that I was like, I can't even pay attention to the plot. I understand why it was used so frequently, because a large part of the second novella is a mental disability and a facial disability. So I understand that that's why that word was being used so frequently, especially for the time period that this story is set in and when this book was written. I understand. But gosh, like it was a lot. Like, it was a lot. And I just got so tired of seeing it. I was like, I'm just trying to enjoy the story. I understand. I got the point. I got it. I got the first time you said it. Like, I'm good. You can stop now. Okay? I got it. So that was just, it was just a little too much for me. It was just like, it was excessive. It was just so excessive, and it just took me out of the story. I think the overall story was really good, actually, if it had been shorter and that hadn't, you know, been taken me out so many times. But yeah, I think the second story was good. It just wasn't as punchy as the first one. That first one really hit you in the face, and this one was just more like a little tap. So I did really like this. That's why I gave it 4 stars. But, you know, I liked the first novella more than the second. Next up in the 4-star category is Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. So this is a reimagining of Dracula from Dracula's bride's perspective, and I really enjoyed this. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I'm not a huge vampire person. It's not really my kind of thing. I've also never read Dracula. Don't really know too much about Dracula, if I'm honest. I don't really care to. It's not really like my thing. Probably will never read Dracula. This, I feel like, though, let me know all I needed to know about Dracula. So, you know, I feel pretty good about just reading this, honestly. And this is sapphic, which I loved. It's very beautiful. The writing is very, like, I want to say like luxurious. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like very luxurious and like lyrical and like pretty, and you know, the writing's just very lovely. It's very nice. It wasn't super, you know, scary or anything like that, but I think people who really like Dracula in general, or like vampire stories, and they want to read something more sapphic and more like women forward than just Dracula, I think this is a really great option. And honestly, I think it's really good. I really enjoyed it, honestly. I mean, I don't know, it wasn't what I expected it to be, but in a good way. I thought I wasn't going to like it at all. Especially everyone kept talking about it and saying that it was like super good, and so I was like, oh no, I'm gonna hate it. But actually I really enjoyed it. I really did like it. So yeah, definitely a good vampire story, so I definitely recommend checking it out if you've been wanting to. I thought it was a lot of fun. Okay, next up and last in the 4-star category is To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger. This book, Oh god. So this is a novella. This is a very gross novella. This is about Andy, who becomes obsessed with vultures and the idea of eating dead flesh. Andy does seek help from her doctor, her therapist, doesn't really seem to help, and Andy's girlfriend does try to help her, but you know, things get gross. Honestly, this was a really gross story. Very gross. You know, as soon as I read Dead Flesh, I kind of knew that I was getting myself into something that I wasn't expecting, but holy crap, this book really goes there. It really does. It really, you know, I can't say too much. It goes there. Okay, so if you don't like gross, extreme horror in that sense, you know, talking about dead flesh, eating dead flesh, you know, that kind of thing, probably don't pick this up, you know, but it was it was a ride. It was very quick, and it was gross, and you know, it did its job and I enjoyed it. So yeah, I mean, you know, it was good. It was good. I guess as good as a book talking about dead flesh can be. So yeah. Next up is the 4.5 star category, and first up we have From Below by my queen, Darcy Coates. Of course, I had to read From Below as soon as it came out because, you know, we know I love Darcy. It's, you know, okay. This book is about a dive team who is granted permission to film and explore the SS Arcadia, which is a ship that went missing years and years ago, and now it has been found, and they want to go down into the wreckage and explore it and film about it. And they are not alone on the ship, so I'll just leave it at that. I didn't really know what to expect by this book. It was really my first dive get it? Anyways, it was my first dive into water horror. I did read Our Wives Under the Sea, but that's not really what I expected from a water horror. So this is really my first big introduction into water horror. So I figured Darcy was going to be the one to like bring me into this subgenre, and I actually really enjoyed it. It's very anxiety inducing. It's very like claustrophobic feeling. I don't like the ocean in general. I'm not like an ocean person. I don't like the fact that we don't know what's down there. It freaks me out, okay? Not a big fan of the ocean. I've only been to the ocean like twice in my life, and I prefer swimming pools, okay? I like to be able to know what I'm swimming in, and the ocean scares me. So I already knew I wasn't gonna like love the ocean setting. I was gonna be really scared, which, you know, was an added bonus. This is very, you know, it's creepy, it's spooky. I will say it didn't do exactly what I thought it was gonna do. I thought we were going down a route, right, from the plot and when I started reading. But then when we got to what was happening, I was like, this isn't quite what I thought was gonna happen, but I wasn't like mad about it. It just wasn't necessarily what I thought was going to happen. There are two POVs, the current present day dive team, and then in the past what happened on the SS Arcadia before it vanished. Personally, I didn't care for the POVs in the past. I thought there were too many of them and I was a little bit bored by them. They weren't like my favorite. I was just more concerned with the present day. I liked that more. It was more scary. It was more interesting. It was more like anxiety inducing. So the past just kind of was like, meh. I could have done with less of the past, maybe just like half of the chapters that were about them. I don't know, because this book is kind of long, and so I wanted just more of present day than I did the past. So that was like my biggest complaint, was just the past was just not my favorite thing. Otherwise this probably would have been like a 5-star read for me. Overall, I really liked this Darcy. I liked seeing her do something different. I liked seeing her take on the underwater horror. And for my first real underwater horror reading experience, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I would definitely want to read more water horror books. So, you know, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Next up and last in the 4.5 star category is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano, I think is how you pronounce their name. I hope so. So this, it was a surprise. I really didn't think I was gonna like this book. I really didn't. I don't know. It just didn't sound like it was gonna be for me, but honestly, it really surprised me. I had a lot of fun reading this book. So this book is about Finlay Donovan, who is a struggling writer and single mom of 2, and she is overheard telling the plot of her next book and is mistaken for a contract killer. And then she accidentally, you know, takes the proposal and she gets tangled up in this huge mess. It's just a huge mess. So this was a lot of fun. It was very, very funny. I don't think I've laughed so much at a book in a really long time. It was just cracking me up. It's very silly. It's very goofy. It's a little bit, you know, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit because some of the things you're just like, there is no freaking way. But, you know, you have to just go with it, or the book, you know, would just fall apart, because you kind of have to just, you know, go with it. Obviously, it's a little over the top. It's a little bit silly, but that's like the whole point. So, you know, it didn't bother me too much. I was able to just like, you know, obviously these things are just like, you know, only would happen in a book. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. There's a little bit of romance, which I was very into. However, there's one thing about the romance that I don't care for. I don't want to talk too much about it just because I don't know if it's like a spoilery bit or not, but it kind of frustrated me, which is why it's not like perfect 5 stars, honestly, because otherwise this would have been a perfect 5 star. But there's just like one thing I didn't like, and I know that the second book is going to play off of that in the romance part, and I'm not looking forward to it. I just don't like that route for this book. It's not something I dislike in general, but just for this book I'm not really a fan of, so yeah. Hopefully that makes sense without, you know, saying too much. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was silly, it was goofy, it cracked me up. The ending? What a cliffhanger! Oh my god! So I will be picking up the second book, obviously. Who do I think I am? I'm gonna read the second one. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I did really enjoy this one. We are on the last ratings. This is the 5-star rated books. I only have 2. And actually, weirdly enough, both of them are short story collections, which I'm just as surprised as you all are, okay? Because short story collections are usually just very hit or miss for me, but these 2 knocked my flip-flapping socks off, and I love them both. So they were my only 2 5 stars, which is so strange to me, but yeah, let's just get into it. First up is Goth by Otsuichi. So this is a Japanese horror short story collection, and these stories focus on Marino, who is kind of like a strange girl in her class. She's a little bit odd, and her classmate are obsessed with brutal murders. And each story is pretty much connected. I will say they flow very nicely from one to the next, and everything does make sense in the end, which I don't see too often with short story collections. Short story collections are usually just like one story and then another, you know, but these really do connect to one another, which I really liked. That's one of the things that I think really helped me love this. Most Japanese horror that I read is overtly supernatural, and this one really isn't. This is focusing on, you know, murders, brutal murders, and more like serial killers, which I also think is something that I really enjoyed. And while it's not exactly like the typical Japanese horror that I read, I do think it is to an extent. I know that makes no sense. I'm very sorry. I'm being vague, like always. You know, I have to be vague. I have to keep up the mystery a little bit, okay? I have to keep you intrigued so you go read it yourself. Obviously, I can't give all of it away to you. Then you wouldn't read the book, and then it would just be, you know, you would never get to enjoy it, you know? So I have to be a little vague, okay? I will say this book is actually very gruesome. The first story kind of just was like, whoa. I wasn't expecting it to be as gory and gruesome and brutal as it was. It just kind of surprised me. I just wasn't expecting it, to be honest, so I was kind of shocked. This does have animal cruelty in it, okay? I'm making that clear. The animal cruelty is pretty, it's pretty graphic, okay? Pretty graphic. So, you know, be wary of that. It shocked me when I read it. I was like, oh my god. Wasn't expecting it. So, you know, be mindful of that. But this is a very, very dark, disturbing, gruesome short story collection, and it just, you know, it knocked my socks off. I really liked it. How many times can I use the phrase knocked my socks off? I feel like I've used it like 4 times in this video. And the next, but certainly not least, in my 5-star category is A Nest of Nightmares by Lisa Tuttle. This is also a Paperbacks from Hell. This is a short story collection of 13 stories, and I am so surprised that I liked this. I mean, I am surprised. Like I said, short story collections are all very hit or miss for me. They really are. It takes a lot for me to like almost every single story in a book. So to have 2 5-star short story collections this month was just insane to me. So the protagonists in these stories are mainly all women, and all of these stories focus on kind of typical things, like very average scenarios and average things that happen in your day-to-day life, but the author twists them and makes them very horror themed, very spooky, very scary, very, you know, bizarre. So it was very interesting, and I think that might be why I liked it. One, I just love when the main characters are women, and so I really enjoyed that, and I really liked the main characters for the most part. Almost all of them were like really well done, and I really enjoyed all of them. And the stories, like I said, you didn't expect them to be as like scary as they were, because they're just almost average things that occur, and I think that's why they were so scary. Every story I really enjoyed. I think there was only like one that I didn't like love, but I still liked it, you know what I mean? So that's why it did get 5 stars, is because overwhelmingly I loved almost every story. The first story, Bug House, I really liked. Community Property was my favorite by so far. Community Property was my favorite. So insane. I really liked The Other Mother. I liked The Memory of Wood. And I really liked The Nest the most. I think those were like my big favorites. Really well done. Again, just like a home run of short stories. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. I really don't know how that happened. It was so crazy to me. So weird. And there you have it, my friends. That is my June wrap up. All 17 books that I read in the month of June. You know, there were some really good books I read this month. Some really surprising books, like the 2 short story collections, Goth and A Nest of Nightmares. Finley Donovan Is Killing It was a big surprise. I got to read another great Darcy Coates, From Below was amazing. And then there were just some, you know, some average disappointing reads, you know, as usual. It was just a very mixed bag this month. As always, let me know what your favorite read of June was, what your least favorite read of June was. If you've read any of the books that I read in June and you want to, let me know what your thoughts were. If you disagreed, if you agreed, let me know in the comments down below. If If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. It lets me know that you enjoyed the video. That way I can keep providing you with this kind of video. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. We can become friends, talk about fun, scary, spooky, romantic books, all that kind of fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!